Chapter 5 Economics, Calm and a New Beginning. September 1926. The fog lay like a wet blanket over Helsingborg that morning when Hunter took his first steps towards high school. There was something different in the air. Maybe it was the smell of the sea mixed with the coal smoke from the passing trains. Maybe it was simply hope. For the first time in a long time, Hunter was not afraid, not angry, not confused, just curious. He was 15 years old and had left the hard school days behind him. The nicknames of elementary school, the whispers, the shadows of his father's voice, all of that was now just echoes in the background. Now something new was beginning, high school, with a focus on economics. Hunter noticed the difference on the first day. The teachers treated the students as thinking people, not as annoying children. His class, a mix of ambitious city kids and a few rural students, did not see him as Hunter the Hunter, but simply as Hunter. One of them, a guy from Gelholm named Eric, sat down next to him during the first accounting lesson and said with a grin, "So, economics. We're going to be rich, right?" Hunter laughed, unfamiliar but liberating. "I mostly thought I'd understand the world a little better." Eric became his first real friend. Together they walked home after school, discussed stock markets, and saved up their weekly allowance to buy used school books. Sometimes they sat in the library and translated German economics books. Eric was loud, charming, and easy to make people laugh. Hunter was quieter, more focused, but with a sharp eye for details and numbers. Home life was still divided, however. One week he lived with his mother Signe in Hagans, where the wine from the sea shook the window panes and the smell of coffee and bread filled the kitchen every morning. Signe worked at a bakery, but always took the time to ask about his days, read old letters from Oscar, and give him a feeling of being at home. The next week it was Carl in Helsingborg. His father had stopped drinking as often, but there was no warmth. Carl was cold, quiet, and only talked about the news, the work at the shipyard, or politics in Europe. They ate in silence, and Hunter always slept with the door locked. But something in Hunter had changed. What had previously scared him, his father's outbursts, his insecurity, his nightmares about Uncle Oscar, had faded. Not because it didn't hurt, but because he had found his place in something else, in numbers, in dreams, in the future. Hunter turned out to have an unusual talent for economics. While other students struggled with balance sheets and interest rates, everything came naturally to him. His teacher, Miss Lindquist, once said, "Hunter, you have the mind of an accountant and the soul of a poet." He didn't know if it was a compliment or not, but he smiled anyway. Accounting, marketing, social studies, everything fascinated him. He wrote essays on the future of economics and analyzed why the stock market crash in the United States could affect even small towns in Sweden. His classmates sometimes called him Mr. Director, but always with respect. One day in March 1928, during a group project on import and export, he met Elvira. She was from Landskrona and had brown eyes that always seemed to know more than you did. They sat together in the library, and the discussion began as a debate about customs duties but quickly drifted into literature, music, and dreams. "What do you want to be?" she asked. "Something where I can understand how the world works. Maybe something about trade, or something that takes me far away from here." "I want to be a journalist," she said, "write about the truth. Even when it hurts." Hunter liked that, and he liked her. They often walked along the harbor after school, shared secrets, giggled at the teachers' clothing choices, and began writing letters to each other during the weeks they didn't see each other. For the first time in a long time, he felt something other than anger or fear. He felt the future. The nightmares about Uncle Oscar began to come less and less often. Instead, he sometimes dreamed of Elvira, or about opening his own business, or about traveling to America, the country he had only read about in old books. Carl noticed the change too. "You've grown up," he said one evening as they sat on the porch. Hunter said nothing. "I was a crappy dad," Carl said suddenly. "But you became something anyway." It was the first time his father had said something like that. It didn't feel like forgiveness. But it was something, a crack in the wall. Summer 1929, the sun shone as if the world had never known war or pain. Hunter stood in the school courtyard, wearing a white cap with a diploma in his hand. The principal had given a speech, Eric had cheered loudly, and Elvira had kissed him on the cheek as he walked down the stairs. "You made it," Signe said, teary-eyed. "You made it after all." Hunter smiled. And he knew it wasn't over. It was just the beginning. They gathered at a cafe in Helsingborg that evening, the whole class. They laughed, sang, danced. Eric gave a speech and accidentally knocked a carafe of lemonade over the principal's jacket. Elvira held Hunter's hand under the table. When night fell, Hunter walked alone down to the water. The sea was as shiny as a mirror. He stood there for a long time. And for the first time in his young life, he felt whole.